The last thing Captain James Blackwood remembered was the deafening roar of the spaceship's engines. The sound was so intense it felt like it was tearing through the very fabric of space itself. He had been on countless missions, faced numerous threats, but this was different. This was a sound that seemed to resonate with the core of his being, a sound that promised nothing but doom. It was unlike anything he'd encountered before. A vessel of alien design, sleek and menacing. The interior was a labyrinth of strange controls and glowing symbols, a stark contrast to the utilitarian designs he was used to. He had barely had time to process the sight before the ship had lurched forward, propelling him into the unknown. A guttural, metallic shriek that seemed to claw at his very bones. Then, darkness. It was as if the universe itself had decided to swallow him whole, leaving him in a void of silence and oblivion. The transition was so abrupt, so jarring, that it left him disoriented and vulnerable. He awoke in a sterile white room, his body restrained. The room was devoid of any warmth, any sign of life. It was a place designed for one purpose: containment. The restraints were tight, digging into his skin, a constant reminder of his captivity. Panic surged through him, a primal fear gripping his heart. He had faced death before, but this was different. This was a fear of the unknown, of being at the mercy of beings he couldn't understand. His mind raced, trying to make sense of his surroundings, to find a way out. He was no stranger to danger, a decorated war hero with years of experience on the battlefield. He had faced enemies of all kinds, from insurgents to rogue operatives, but this was different. This was a threat that defied all his training, all his instincts, but this was different. This was a situation that no amount of training could prepare him for. The fear was palpable, a living entity that seemed to wrap itself around him, squeezing the breath from his lungs. This was beyond anything he could have ever imagined. The room, the restraints, the very air he breathed felt alien. It was a stark reminder that he was far from home, far from anything familiar. He was in a place where the rules of reality seemed to bend and twist. Two figures entered the room, tall and slender, with skin the color of alabaster and eyes like pools of liquid silver. Their presence was both mesmerizing and terrifying. They moved with a fluid grace, their eyes never leaving him, studying him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. They moved with an unnerving grace, their limbs seemingly devoid of joints. It was as if they were made of some otherworldly material, something that defied the laws of physics. Their movements were almost hypnotic, a dance of shadows and light. One of them approached him, its long, delicate fingers tracing the outline of his jaw. The touch was cold, almost mechanical, yet there was a strange gentleness to it. It was as if the creature was trying to understand him, to connect with him on some primal level. Fear morphed into anger, a familiar fury coursing through his veins. He had been captured, restrained, and now he was being studied like some kind of specimen. The indignity of it all fueled his rage, giving him the strength to fight back. He struggled against his restraints, his voice hoarse as he barked, "Who are you? What do you want with me?" His words echoed in the sterile room, a defiant challenge to his captors. He needed answers, needed to understand what was happening to him. The creature tilted its head, its expression unreadable. It was as if it was trying to process his words, to make sense of his defiance. The silence stretched on, a tense standoff between captor and captive. A series of clicks and whistles escaped its mouth, sounds that sent shivers down Blackwood's spine. The sounds were alien, otherworldly, a language that defied comprehension. It was a stark reminder of just how far from home he was. Then a voice echoed in his head, not his own, but one that spoke directly to his mind. It was a voice that carried with it a weight of authority, a voice that demanded attention. It was a voice that left no room for doubt or defiance. "We are the Sheila, and you, Captain Blackwood, are our prisoner." The words were clear, precise, and filled with an unspoken threat. They were words that left no room for negotiation, no room for escape. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threat. They were a declaration of his fate, a fate that seemed inescapable. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls pressing in, suffocating him with their cold indifference. Blackwood's breath caught in his throat, his mind reeling from the implications. He was a prisoner, a captive of beings that defied all understanding. His mind raced, trying to find a way out, a way to escape this nightmare. He was a prisoner of war, captured by beings from beyond the stars. The realization hit him like a physical blow, leaving him gasping for breath. He was light years from home, from everything he knew and loved. His training kicked in, urging him to remain calm, to assess the situation. He had been trained to handle high-stress situations, to think on his feet. He needed to stay focused, to find a way to turn the situation to his advantage. But fear, cold and sharp, gnawed at his resolve. It was a fear that went beyond the physical, a fear that reached into the very core of his being. It was a fear of the unknown, of being at the mercy of beings he couldn't understand. He was stranded, alone, light years from Earth, at the mercy of creatures he didn't understand. The isolation was suffocating, a constant reminder of his vulnerability. He was a soldier, a warrior, but here he was just a man, alone and afraid. The Jila were a race of warriors, known throughout the galaxy for their unmatched combat skills and advanced technology. Their armor, a blend of sleek design and impenetrable material, was a testament to their prowess and ingenuity. They were engaged in a bitter conflict with an enemy known as the Krell, a race equally fierce and determined. The battles between these two formidable forces were legendary, with each side suffering heavy losses. The Sheela civilization, once thriving and prosperous, was now on the brink of collapse. Their cities lay in ruins, and their leaders convened in desperate councils, seeking a way to turn the tide of the war. Their armies were stretched thin across the galaxy, fighting on multiple fronts. Each battle drained their resources and morale, leaving them vulnerable and weary. In their search for a solution, they saw in Blackwood a potential weapon, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Blackwood was a human soldier, renowned for his tactical brilliance and unwavering courage. His reputation had spread far and wide, and the Sheela believed that his skills could turn the tide of the war in their favor. They envisioned him leading their forces to victory, his strategies outmaneuvering the Krell at every turn. They offered him a choice: fight for them or face the consequences. The council's terms were clear and uncompromising, leaving Blackwood with little room for negotiation. Blackwood, ever the proud soldier, refused. His loyalty to his own kind and his principles were unshakable. He would not be a pawn in their intergalactic conflict, no matter the cost. He stood firm, his resolve unyielding. He would not betray his own kind, even if it meant facing dire consequences. As he looked at a photo of Earth, memories of his home flooded his mind. He thought of his family, his friends, and the life he had left behind. He would not betray them, no matter the cost. His defiance, however, was met with amusement. The Sheela, confident in their superiority, found his resistance almost entertaining. Yet beneath their amusement there was a hint of admiration. The Sheela respected his spirit, his unwavering loyalty, and his refusal to bend to their will. They subjected him to a series of grueling tests, designed to break him both physically and mentally. These tests were unlike anything he had ever faced before, pushing him to his absolute limit. The physical challenges were brutal, testing his strength, endurance, and pain tolerance. The mental challenges were equally harrowing, designed to break his spirit and willpower. They wanted to break him, to strip away his resistance and mold him into a weapon of their own. Days turned into weeks, each one a relentless assault on his body and mind. He was starved, sleep-deprived, and forced to endure unimaginable pain. The Sheela were relentless, their methods cruel and efficient. Each day was a battle for survival, his body a symphony of aches and pains. He fought with every ounce of strength he could muster, determined not to break. He was forced to fight against their best warriors in brutal hand-to-hand combat. These battles were fierce and unforgiving, each one a test of his resolve and determination. He fought with every ounce of strength he could muster, his body a symphony of aches and pains. But the Sheela were relentless, their methods cruel and efficient. Slowly, inexorably, they began to chip away at his resolve. His body was bruised and battered, his spirit worn down by the relentless assault. The Sheela overseers watched his every move, their eyes cold and calculating. They were determined to break him, to strip away his resistance and mold him into a weapon of their own. Their methods were cruel and efficient, designed to break even the strongest of wills. They showed him images of the Krell, monstrous creatures that thirsted for conquest. Slowly, inexorably, they began to chip away at his resolve. He was shown images of the Krell, monstrous creatures that thirsted for conquest, their very existence a threat to the Sheela way of life. He was shown images of the Krell, monstrous creatures that thirsted for conquest, their very existence a threat to the Sheila way of life. He heard tales of their atrocities, of planets ravaged and civilizations extinguished. The Krell were a menace, a blight on the galaxy that needed to be eradicated. The Sheila painted themselves as the defenders of the galaxy, fighting to protect their way of life from the Krell's insatiable hunger for conquest. He heard tales of their atrocities, of planets ravaged and civilizations extinguished. The Krell were a menace, a blight on the galaxy that needed to be eradicated. He heard tales of their atrocities, of planets ravaged and civilizations extinguished. The Krell were a menace, a blight on the galaxy that needed to be eradicated. He began to see a glimmer of justification in the Sheila's cause, but more than that, he began to understand the futility of his situation. He was a caged animal, his fate out of his control. He began to understand the futility of his situation. He was a caged animal, his fate out of his control. He was a caged animal, his fate out of his control. The Sheila had broken him, stripped away his resistance, and left him a shadow of his former self. He was a caged animal, his fate out of his control. The Sheila had broken him, stripped away his resistance, and left him a shadow of his former self. Yet, in the depths of his despair, a spark of defiance remained. He would not give up. Not yet. The fight was not over. Exhaustion eventually took its toll. The relentless battles, the unending waves of enemies, and the constant state of alertness had worn him down. Each day felt like an eternity, and every night brought little respite. The weight of his armor seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment, and the once vibrant landscape around him now appeared as a bleak and desolate wasteland. Blackwood, battered and broken, finally yielded. His spirit, once unbreakable, now seemed fragile. The scars on his body were a testament to the countless battles he had fought. But the deeper wounds were the ones that couldn't be seen. They were the ones that haunted his dreams and gnawed at his resolve. He agreed to fight for the Sheila, not out of loyalty, but out of a desperate need to survive. The choice was not an easy one, but in the face of certain death, he saw no other option. The Sheila, with their advanced technology and formidable forces, offered him a lifeline, albeit one that came with its own set of chains. They were quick to exploit his skills, training him in the use of their advanced weaponry and deploying him to the front lines. The training was rigorous, pushing him to his limits and beyond. He learned to wield weapons that were far beyond anything he had ever seen, each one a marvel of alien engineering. He adapted quickly, his years of combat experience proving invaluable in the chaos of the Sheila War. The battlefield became his new home, a place where he could lose himself in the heat of battle and forget, if only for a moment, the weight of his choices. His instincts, honed over years of warfare, guided him through the chaos. His victories were swift and brutal. Each enemy he felled was a step closer to survival, a testament to his prowess and determination. The Sheila began to see him not just as a tool, but as a formidable warrior in his own right. He fought with a cold detachment, his emotions numbed by the constant violence. The horrors of war had a way of deadening the soul, and Blackwood was no exception. He became a machine of war, efficient and unfeeling, driven by the singular goal of survival. His name became synonymous with fear among the Krell, his reputation as a ruthless warrior spreading like wildfire. Stories of his exploits spread through the ranks of the enemy, each tale more terrifying than the last. The mere mention of his name was enough to send shivers down the spines of those who opposed him. The Sheila, impressed by his tactical acumen and unwavering efficiency, promoted him through their ranks. They saw in him a leader, someone who could inspire their troops and strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. His rise through the ranks was swift, each promotion a recognition of his value to their cause. He became a commander, leading their troops to victory after victory. The mantle of leadership was not one he had sought, but it was one he wore with a grim determination. Each battle he led was a testament to his strategic brilliance and unyielding resolve. He found a strange solace in the structure of their military hierarchy. The rigid discipline and clear chain of command provided a sense of order in the chaos of war. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil within his own mind, a refuge from the storm of his thoughts. He was given purpose, a role to play in the grand scheme of their conflict. The Sheila war machine was vast and complex, and within it he found a place where he could make a difference. His actions had meaning. His decisions had weight, and for the first time in a long while he felt a sense of belonging. He pushed away the gnawing guilt, the knowledge that he was betraying his own species. The faces of those he had left behind haunted him, but he buried those feelings deep within. Survival demanded it, and in the harsh reality of war there was no room for doubt or regret. He told himself that survival was the only imperative, that morality was a luxury he could no longer afford. In the end, it was the only way he could continue to fight, to lead, and to survive in a world that had been turned upside down. The path he had chosen was fraught with peril, but it was the only one left to him.